Thank you very much, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Transformative Transport Conference and to this Movin'On panel discussion on building the momentum for sustainable and inclusive mobility in Africa. I'm Charlène Kouassi, the director of Movin'On in Africa, and I will moderate this session. I will be your host. Movin'On is an international reference platform created by Michelin in 2017 for ecosystemic innovation. And it is led by businesses with a multimodal and cross-sectorial approach, enabling the emergence of and acceleration of concrete solutions and behavioral change for sustainable mobility and a desirable future as well. Today, we are exploring sustainability and inclusivity challenges, but also opportunities in the transport sector in Africa, as we will bring along different perspectives from the private sector with Scania West Africa and Mobility for Africa, whose engagement go beyond business and profit, creating social and economical impact for communities, but also from the international organization side with the GIZ, with feedback experience on empowering vulnerable communities through impact-driven projects. But first, let me introduce our panel, our three panelists and one keynote speaker. First, I will start with Gabriel Tokam. I'm sure he's here, is a policy advisor for transport and climate at GIZ Kenya, where it supports the Rethinking Transport initiative, is dedicated to developing innovative solutions to the complex challenges facing mobility systems in developing countries, with years of experience in the sector, including consultancy positions at the World Bank, UN Habitat, or the SLOCAT partnership. And Tokam brings a unique perspective and in-depth understanding of the transport landscape in Africa, and is proud to be driving sustainable change on the continent and contributing to the global fight against climate change. Next is Shanta. She will join us in a few minutes. Shanta Bloman. She's the founding director of Mobility for Africa, a social enterprise that aims to bring the electric mobility revolutions to rural Africa. The company is operational since 2019, and has developed shared mobility solutions with the use of e-tricycles and off-grid battery swapping system, and also working with small-scale farmers, especially women. And Shanta was part of a team that helped to develop Zimbabwe's electric mobility policy and framework. And she has a degree in Africa history and master's degree in international affairs and communication. And she spent 2 decades working in Asia and Africa. The third panelist is Haron Jesselink, is the Driving the Shift manager at Scania West Africa Limited, where he has in charge of leading the shift towards electrification and the use of biofuels, contributing to reduce climate impact and achieving science-based targets for Scania and their customers. Parallel to this task is also responsible for the after-sales training, coaching, and setting up tailor-made training programs for transport companies. And Aaron has run successful projects in cooperation, notably with GIZ, in different PPP projects in West Africa over the last 8 years, focusing on inclusion, on women equality as well, and on job creation. And last but not least, Tamara Ojiega. She's a seasoned client director at Kantar with over 15 years of experience in market research and strategic consulting. She specializes in driving sustainable brand and product growth through data-driven consumer insights. And she's dedicated to transforming how businesses approach sustainability, particularly in the context of the evolving consumer landscape. So we are lucky to have such a beautiful panel here. But first, we'll start with a little bit of context with Tamara, representing our Movin'On partner, Kantar, who is the world-leading data consulting and research company that supports corporations and brands to better understand people and inspire growth. Sustainable growth through strategy, through innovation, and through communication over 90 markets over the world and on diverse industries, such as automotive and mobility, but also energy and utilities, fashion and beauty, telecoms, as many other sectors. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we're excited to listen, to hear, and to react as well on the sustainability snapshot that you have prepared for us. And we will carry on afterwards with the panel discussion. But feel free to put some questions in the chat if you have some. And then we'll have a 10 minutes Q&A afterwards. So I will share Tamara's presentation. Let me check.
Thank you, Charlène. It's exciting to be here and to be part of today's discussion. As much as I'm contributing, I'm also excited to hear what the other panelists have to share. Am I audible?
Yeah, you
Yes,
are very much
heard you.
audible. The problem is, let me check. I can't see them. If I do that.
Who are you looking for? Okay.
I'm looking for the presentation mode for Tamara. Do you see my screen in like presentation
It's in
mode?
presentation mode. Thank you
Yes.
very much. So we can go
This
straight
is not what I was expecting from Kantar. It looks very engineering.
It looks, but I can tell you it doesn't feel anywhere close to engineering. It's very sustainable and inclusive.
Thank you.
That I can assure you. We are on brief, have nothing to fear. Charlène, if you would be kind enough to move to slide 2. I know my time is limited, so I will try and be brief, but make sure I land things from our side. So I will start off with the state of mobility in Africa today, and it is characterized by a mix of traditional and emerging transport options, as we all know. And that is just as a reflection of how diverse our continent's needs and challenges are. Of course, the sector is largely driven by public transport options. Cars are still very much aspirational and associated with status. But as we know, sustainability plays a critical role in the mobility sector on the continent because it addresses environmental, economic, and social challenges. However, more sustainability mobility solutions are either not established or feasible considering the current environment that we find ourselves in. Now, our mobility challenges and implications are not expected to change without significant interventions. And that's why the other panelists exist, because that is the role that they are currently playing. And in order for us to be able to move forward in the current environment, we have to look at things like infrastructure limitations, what the consumer habits, perceptions, and attitudes towards mobility are, understand the regulations and those in charge and how they manage it. We need to get into those rooms. However, mobility in Africa contributes significantly to the challenges as well, because one of the key things consumers complain about is poor air quality, and that has impact on climate change and climate action, as well as congestions in the cities, leading to health-related issues. Now, the expectation from consumers, to be honest, is that players in the mobility sector need to focus on addressing those air pollution challenges and greenhouse emissions. If you move to the next slide, we've conducted studies across several markets on the continent. And the one thing that is standard, or we see across all the markets we conducted studies and even globally, is that no matter where people find themselves in the world, they will worry mostly about the things that personally affect them and their families directly. That is just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When issues affect the world, most people find it hard to connect, but when it affects them personally, it shifts things and priorities really quickly. And right now, the things that are affecting people on the continent have a lot to do with inflation, cost of living, air pollution, water pollution. And essentially, these are climate actions that are amongst the top concerns affecting daily lives, and they expect businesses to address this. And we see that when it comes to the SDG, which consumers in Africa are showing most concerns about, there are 9 specific goals, a lot around social, economic, as well as climate change. So we do have a role to play in alleviating the challenges when it comes to climate action due to the impact mobility has when it comes to air pollution. Now, if we move on, Charlène, could you help me move to the next slide, please?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, okay.
Okay, here we are. So we can't talk about sustainability without addressing the issues of inclusion. Because when something is truly sustainable, it requires that everyone has equal opportunity to participate and benefit from all environmental and social economic progress. Now, when it comes to inclusivity, Kantar recently conducted a study across 18 markets for which 3 African countries were included. We spoke to over 20,000 respondents across the 18 countries. And the results of the study showed that African countries ranked the highest when it came to average discrimination experience. And simultaneously, people in the African markets that took part in that study placed a high value on diversity and inclusion in their lives. So it's not a myth. People on the continent care about inclusivity. And we have to acknowledge these struggles that the underrepresented have to be represented. It's essential for them, and we must consider this even in the mobility sector. And I like how some of the introduction Charlène gave focused on some of us already taking strides in inclusivity, because it is going to be a huge necessity and part and parcel of how we drive innovation in the sector, because the mobility sector has to ensure that all segments of society, including the marginalized and vulnerable groups, have access to safe, affordable, and efficient transportation. Charlène, if you move on to the next slide for me, we are also aware that there are barriers, and it is what it is, as we say. Vulnerable groups face even more unequal challenges due to inadequate infrastructure, high cost, safety issues not being considered in the initiatives that are being rolled out when it comes to transportation. However, it's crucial for us on the continent and in the future of mobility that these disadvantaged and marginalized groups are considered due to the impact it has on economic and social progress. We hear about the need for gender equity in the sector, when we think mobility, most people just think it's a male-dominating sector. How inclusive can we be? And the impact, the domino effect that has on economic and social inclusion. Imagine employing more women into the sector and how many more families get to be taken care of or have their daily livelihoods improved. All these areas need to be embraced when we think about, the solutions in the space so that we achieve a more equitable, efficient, and environmentally friendly transport system. Now I'll move on to talk about innovations. My time is very limited. I promise you I'm almost at the end, but we're going to draw inspiration from another sector that has done something and done it well. Now, when we talk about innovation, we have framed the opportunity for inclusive, sustainable mobility as one that is ASAP. I know most of us, we hear ASAP and we think as soon as possible, but from a counter perspective, we say African solutions to African problems. And we're using the mobile industry or mobile tech sector as an example to illustrate this. And I'm sure if all of us cast our minds back to when GSM or mobile phones came into the continent, we didn't take the progressive leap other Western or global North took. Ours was entirely different. We skipped computers and laptops as a whole, and a phone was something nearly everyone had as a device, whether it was for communication, work, or leisure, right? And people could use their phone to access banking services. M-Pesa was something that was launched in East Africa and worked very well. We just didn't follow what the West was doing, and we formed our own path. And if we are going to see any success in mobility in the continent, chances are that we're going to take the same strides here. We're going to have to take a similar approach where it comes to innovating in Africa, because we understand the challenges and the peculiarities of the landscape. And I'm really keen to hear what other panelists will have to say about this. If we move on, I'm almost at the end. When we speak about African solutions, e-mobility represents one of the transformative opportunities for Africa to leapfrog transport models towards sustainability systems. And for many good reasons. We have abundant solar, there's the wind, we have hydroelectric resources, and all of this can enable different innovations succeed with the current situations we find ourselves in, right? There's the interest in the space as well for startups introducing like tuk-tuks, e-motorcycles, exactly what Movin'On is also doing, finding how to do the battery exchange systems. These are things peculiar to us, and these are the type of solutions that will thrive on the continent. Of course, not to mention government initiatives. We hear about the different policies being raised here and there, and all the different things going on. Now, what I also want to highlight on this slide is in one of our sustainability studies, we have something that we call the value action gap, which highlights what people value versus what they do. Now, in terms of being open and willing to embrace sustainable or environmentally friendly transport options, that desire is there. But right now, with one of the widest gaps that we see versus other things. And it's a wide gap because people desire, but then these things don't really exist, or they exist to a select few. And that is something that highlights where there's the opportunity for us to innovate. Knowing that public transportation systems are one of the largest forms of transport. No, you can go ahead. Okay. It only makes sense that when we think e-mobility, perhaps we need to start from there. And a good or great example is what we are sharing right now on the screen, what we see in Senegal. not only is this environmentally friendly, they are particular and they are focused on inclusivity, whereby they have a goal to prioritize a strong female workforce. And this is not something they have on paper. This is something that they are living. If you go online, if you go to Senegal, you will see that this BRT system, which is solar powered, by the way, is in operation. They are taking passengers to and fro their destinations. They are prioritizing women in the community as part of the workforce. And it's something that can be leveraged and scaled to other parts of the continent. So the second example, still from Senegal, is for their train transport system. Again, public transport options. And this one was focused mainly on congestion and traffic. They built these railway lines to take a lot of people off the roads and keep them to give them direct destination trips at a quicker rate, and then decongesting the crowds on the roads, right? And so it's possible on the continent. The options are massive, and it's left for the experts on today's call to continue to drive these initiatives across other parts of the continent. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Charlène, so we can proceed with the rest of the session, which I'm truly excited to be listening to.
Thank you very much, Tamara. I think you had a great overview of not only the challenges that we are facing here in the transport sector in Africa, but also the many opportunities and needs that people are actually expressing. And I'm really interested about the gap between the value, like the people want things, but there's a big difference in the action when it comes to action. I don't know if the panelists here have any reaction, anything to add on that, especially in regards to the work they are doing. Not to go too deep into this panel today, but if you have something to add to that, feel free. And also in the chat or in the audience, if you want to ask any questions to Tamara or other panelists, don't hesitate to do so.
I have a question for Tamara.
Mm.
You said that the BRT system in Senegal for the electric buses is charged with solar panels. Is that 100% correct? Or
so based on the work I've seen them put out, that is the end goal, to move to 100% solar.
To move,
but right
to
now,
move,
I do it's still electric versus, yeah.
Because that's the system, the BRT is financed by the World Bank, correct?
Yes.
We had some discussions with people from the World Bank that they will only finance BRT systems if they're 100% electric. They don't want to hear about CNG, biogas even. They're not interested, which is a shame, because we see a huge potential in transferring waste into biogas.
I totally agree with you on that. And perhaps these are conversations that multiple people have to keep taking to them until someone sees the light. It has to be constant communication, constant, should I say case studies, because granted, there are other economies or societies where these things are being used and they have been successful. And so perhaps it's just a question of time and persistence.
Yeah.
But yes, I do agree with you. I do, because we do have a lot of waste. It's a no-brainer.
We are actually working together with some institutes, leading institutes in Nigeria, on waste transformation into biogas. You know, in Lagos they collect 15,000 tons of waste every day on the official side. That's 5.5 million tons per year. That's a huge amount of potential biogas. Of course, you need to invest in the equipment and the installation to digest it or whatever you call it, but I'm flying to Nigeria in a couple of hours. I'm going to meet the foreign minister of Sweden and Nigeria to discuss this, to see what we can do and how we had a delegation taking to Sweden to see how they do it in Sweden and so on. That's my personal opinion is it's a bigger effect, and also linked to the SDGs. If you transfer waste into biogas, you take all 17 boxes of the SDGs, all of them.
I totally agree with you, because you need people to gather the waste. It needs plants to be processed, and then of course going back into providing a source of energy, livelihoods.
It's creating jobs. It's reducing landfills. It's tackling everything. It's
everything.
I'm
save
surprised
the
that
seas
it's
and
not
the oceans, because ideally those waste products, more than half of them probably end up in there somewhere.
Yeah, but okay.
There's two other questions from John and from Anna. Just before that, I just wanted to add on what Tamara said about Senegal. The idea is not to focus on electrification powered by solar only, but the idea is to have like something that would be a multi-dimensional solution. I know that on the there are two other lines, BRT lines that are in preparation, and that the CNG is also a solution that they consider. They have built a consortium with a local company. I think it's SB2 for all. And they have actually experience on waste to fuel solutions, and they are part of this consortium with the CETUD, so the Urban Mobility Authority of Dakar. So it's something that they have in mind, and I think that it's also a direction that other West African countries should really adopt. So I'm happy that Nigeria is also considering that. I will follow up with you on that, Aaron, to see what the negotiation, what will be the output of these negotiations, because we need all the solutions that we have. We can't afford to favor one and leave the other. No. John and Anna, if you could quickly ask your question, because we have to move on to the panel discussion. John, maybe go ahead first.
Ladies first. Hello? Ladies first. Anna?
Okay, ladies first. Perfect. Anna?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Hi. I was listening to the presentation, and I was just curious about something. I mean, at least in Angola, we have problems with power shortages and electrification of the whole city. And when government brings about the idea of electrical public transport, everyone just raises hands saying, hey, we don't have power in our houses, and now you're bringing this electrical public transport system. I mean, how is that even sensible? And I'd like to know if this is just Angola, or is any other country that you've been studying that has the same problem. The other issue is it's probably not entirely on this discussion, but I think it's important that we bring about is the production of the electrical motors and all the apparel that we need to have this transportation system going on, because most of the have to import, and I don't know if that is sustainable on its own. So we're talking about sustainability. Yes, we're not using fuel, but is that sustainable to be importing this? Is it sustainable that we're importing something that we don't produce and we don't know how to maintain? I think that's just questions that we should, really think about, because there's other issue about the long life of this equipment. And it's already a discussion that has been, raising, how they are mined, where they are produced, and how long they last. Is it really sustainable to have, electrical public transport? I mean, it's just a question and a curiosity. I mean, the first one is more a curiosity, but I think it fits in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so with my knowledge of the industry and what I've seen in other spaces, your questions are actually valid. You are not alone with the first question. Every other African country that has challenges with energy, which is nearly all of us, have the same concerns, like, oh, we don't have power in our homes. How does it then make sense for you to be bringing in electric buses, right? But we are going to have to take one step in the right direction, as small as that step might be, right? At least for now, we're not looking at every individual home owning an electric vehicle. We're looking at something being run by the government and managed by, or whoever the transport system is. And so that means they have to get their infrastructure right, and they take the pressure off the common man or the everyday man to ensure that their buses are well charged and available for daily transportation. As you can see, most of us on the continent use public transports. Some of us on this call may have personal cars and we drive, but the vast majority of people depend on public transport. And so if we can solve that problem first, then we can start to go deeper into why do we import, how is it made, and all of that. So I think it's almost like eating an elephant. You have to eat starting with maybe little parts first, right? At least little parts in the right direction. And I don't know, Harren, if you have anything to add to that. You sound like you have a lot of experience in this space.
Well, I've been working with electrification since a long time. There's a big difference between implementing electrification in Europe and doing it in Africa, and I'm aware of the electric shortage and the issues, the daily challenges for let's say the normal people. And one of our approaches is that if we sell, when we get a request from a customer in Africa, in our region now, and they request for electric trucks, electric buses, we always offer them the option for solar panels. We found a solid partner in Ghana. They are offering solar panel systems. They help us install it, and it's good for the local company. It's good for Scania as well, because we offer electric vehicles and we are 100% sure that they will be charged with green energy. It's a steep learning curve. For example, I learned a couple of months ago that even hydropower is not seen as 100% green, because it has to do with social impact. It has to do with fauna and flora, how the dam has been built, and all these kind of things. So, for example, I know that Ghana, they claim to have 25% hydropower, but that 25% hydropower is not 100% green. It's only 10% or something. They have, in 2021, Ghana claimed to have 3% solar panel energy, and that's it, which is peanuts. It's the only thing we can do. I see it as our own obligation to inform our customers. Say, look, this is the truck. We can tell you how much CO2 it costs to produce it, because we produce our own batteries, which is different than our competitors, which we produced in the north of Sweden. We have cooperations, agreements with factories, and so on and so on. We even try to control the transport, that we work with green companies shipping it from Europe to Africa and so on. But for the electricity, if you put the energy into constructing a truck for an electric truck, and then you're going to charge it with fossil fuel produced energy, where is the gain? I can make calculations to see that it doesn't gain anything, as long as you don't charge it with solar panels. And I agree with Anna. It's I don't want to talk against my own business, but electrification is a small part of the solution in Africa.
Mhm.
For me, I'm still convinced, my personal opinion, waste into biogas, waste to fuel. That's the biggest.
On that note, Aaron, because I wanted to start the panel discussion with you actually, with the first question, so it makes sense. You've mentioned it. Scania has been developing premium products and mostly selling trucks, buses, and power solutions. But can you tell us more about the challenges, the specific challenges that you are facing in the African region? Because you know that Scania is implanted in other continents. But what are the specific challenges that you are facing here, especially in West Africa, actually?
Well, I can only refer to West Africa. I've been here for 8 years now. I traveled around a bit, but I've been living and working here. Political agenda is a challenge. For example, the reason why we are busy in Ghana and in Ivory Coast with electric trucks and electric buses, the only reason is because we have an interest from customers. And most of the customers are international transport companies. They say, look, this is our global environmental impact. So we want to reduce our CO2 production. So in that specific country, in that specific market, we want to reduce it. What's the best way? Electrification. If you look at the political agenda, for example, in Ghana, we are trying to do things now, which is on the political agenda for 2045. I will be retired by that time. So we are 20 years ahead of the political agenda, which means that we are doing things we're not supposed to do, actually, on the political side. Of course, it comes from the same as Scania. We are committed to the Science-Based Targets Initiative. If we don't fulfill our commitment, we will be penalized for it, and so on. So we do our best to commit to what we agreed on. But it's if you don't have the politics supporting you, it becomes difficult. Then you can only do it on a low level. Decision making, because it's not priority on the political agenda, makes it difficult. I still don't know what kind of, for example, for the customer, we tell them, look, this is the import tax that we will have on electric vehicles. In Ghana, we know there is a subsidy when you import electric cars, but they haven't thought about electric trucks and electric buses. So we're a bit, hoping that it's not going to be more. We actually hope it's going to be less, but that we're going to be treated the same as electric cars, but we don't know. On biofuels, for example, we are currently running a test transferring rubber seats into biodiesel in Fame. We are doing an in-traffic test now. When the test is done, it's like a POC, proof of concept. We know that it works because all our engines are compatible with whatever kind of biofuel or biodiesel you put in. But then you need stakeholders, and the most important is local governments, to agree on making investments in this to industrialize this. You can link this all to the SDGs. Because you create jobs. We are working together with GIZ. They're working together with the local farmers to collect the seeds. We transfer it into oil. The oil has been refined into fuel and so on. It creates jobs. It's reducing waste. It's adding value to non-value parts and whatever it is. It takes a very long time before governments take a decision on this. Why? I'm not a political guy. I know that politics is needed, but I don't speak always the political language. I'm too simple for it, I think. But it's it takes a very long time for governments to take decisions which are not always it's not their priority. Lack of knowledge and competence. That's a big challenge for us. If you look at the technology that we have in our vehicles that we sell, that we deliver in West Africa, besides I don't want to become too technical, but the biggest difference is the Euro level, the emission. You have Euro 3, Euro 4, 5, 6. In Europe, we are at Euro 6 now. We are working already with Euro 7. It requires let's say the lower fuel quality that we have in West Africa region. It requires a less complicated fuel system. For the rest, the truck has the same 18 computers inside. Now, it's not rocket science, but it can be very, very complex, very complicated. And local people, local technicians, they lack, let's say, knowledge about modern systems. And I'm not joking. I worked with guys in Ghana, and they think they can fix things with black magic. I'm not sure that's the reality, and it doesn't work like that. So that's one of the reasons why when we start up projects, we want to include training programs as well, as we've done in Ghana, as we are doing in Abidjan, as we do in other markets, where we often cooperate with GIZ, which is a great partner for us to have a more social aspect as well. Also convincing customers to invest in female drivers. First of all, in driver training, and second of all, in female drivers, because I mentioned it in the chat here. I've done a study during the pandemic on comparing female drivers and male drivers, and it actually shown at the end of my study that if you invest time into, first of all, in the trainees, and more specifically into women, they achieve the same level as guys with 15 or 20 years of experience, and in many cases they're even better.
I'm really sorry, Aaron, to cut you on this, but it's
no problem.
It makes a great transition for the other panelists. For Cabrel, who is here, and I really want to hear more about because we talked a lot about GIZ without having you talking. So I'm really happy to have you here. If you could tell us what is the vision, because you're actually you work in Kenya. So what is the vision of GIZ about the evolution of mobility and transport in Kenya, and why it is seen as the leading economy or the example for the rest of Africa in terms of sustainable development and growth?
Thank you, Charlène. I hope you can hear me.
Perfectly.
Good. So yeah, thank you so much also, Aaron, for the key insight about also some support from GIZ in West Africa. So it's the same actually in Kenya. So first of all, GIZ, as you know, is the main development agency, implementation agency from the German government. And then we are actually operating in over 120 countries with over 4 billion euro of operations now since December last year. And then in Africa, our main portfolio actually ranges between like energy projects, good governance, climate project, and also the recent year now in the transport sectors, which actually I think the smallest portfolio, I would say, in Africa, because we have like bigger portfolio in Asia and Latin America, and then we recently started working on transport and mobility project across the continent. And then in Kenya, we actually have two bilateral active projects. We have the promotion of electric mobility in the country, supported by BMZ, the German Ministry of Economic Development and Cooperation. And then you also have the improve projects, looking at fuel economy, improve vehicle efficiencies, with component in Kenya and Morocco. So I think that's something that can be relevant also to Aaron's work. So this one is actually supported by the BMW UK. And yeah, so our vision actually is to really create our work actually, our day-to-day work is actually to shape a future worth living. Then we actually and then
It seems that
we
there's
also
some problem with the network. Is it only on my side, or
No, I had the same experience.
can you
so can
just
I
repeat
switch off
the
my
last
camera?
sentence, Cabral? Maybe the last sentence.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, yes, so we are actually driven by results, as a federal state-owned company. And then we also provide concrete solutions in partners countries where we do operate. Yes. And also, finally, we are actually a global player of international development across the world.
As you mentioned, I think you could remove, if you can try to remove the
Can you hear me?
Cabral. Yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me now? I tried to switch off. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bits.
go on.
So yeah, so I think why Kenya? Why do you have actually one of the biggest portfolio in Africa in Kenya? Just because of the strategic location of the country. So making the countries a global hub for like trade and logistics, and the regional transport sectors. And also we can actually see a progressive policy environment in the country. So a country has national transport policy, and now the country is looking forward to an electric mobility policy and with full support of the business. So I guess we know that the draft policy already around public and then coming also now the country have their own mobility policy, and also we can easily see that Kenya is actually a hub for innovation and technology.
I'm really
So
sorry,
Kenya
Cabral.
is,
It's really difficult to hear you. Well, I don't know if
Yes.
it's
Yes, I have the
really,
same issue with him. Yeah.
wow.
yeah,
So
I don't know what's the problem. There's
I think
some
it's the data bundle.
network
So
instability in Nairobi at the moment. I don't know.
yeah. So yeah, so it impacts actually many sectors now. But I think I will just try to continue if you can hear
Yeah,
me. So
sure.
yeah. So yeah, so just as a hub of innovation and technology, but also Kenya is actually a global leader of renewable energy production. So that's the country actually has 92% of the grid green. And the good news is that there's actually new projects, helping actually bridge the gaps to lead the country to 100%, renewable energy grids, for the next years, also supported by GIZ. So we have a lot of things happening, in the countries, and we are this vision, to have actually an inclusive transport system for all citizens, in rural area and marginalized communities. So this is why we are happy to work in Kenya, and then we love to continue to support the countries into that directions. Yeah.
So basically the geographical position, the interest regarding like trades, logistics, and the renewable energy potential and actual asset that Kenya is providing, and also there's a lot of innovation there. I guess that the policies towards maybe foreign integration is good. Is it easier to set up a company in Kenya rather than we'll see it later with Shanta in Zimbabwe, for example?
Yeah, I think Kenya is one of the countries in Africa where it's, in less than 24 hours, you can actually have your company registered. You can easily see it in the e-mobility space, the number of startups that are actually currently operating across the country. So this can actually demonstrate how easily it is easy actually in the countries to, to set up like a company. And then it's also like a global hub for private companies, and then they are open for international investment. So also in one of the projects where we actually encourage, public-private partnerships, we can easily see how effective, the country has been to actually attract private investment in order to boost, economic development in the country. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, for that. In the interest of time, I hope we'll have at least 2 or 3 minutes for you to talk about one of the projects you have been implemented in Kenya. But first, let me introduce Shanta. Shanta, I have actually a question for you. We had an overview of the vision of GIZ about Kenya, and has been a real boost for the sector in Africa and in East Africa in particular. But Kenya is part of the many exceptions, but it's not the case in the whole continent. And other territories like Zimbabwe, for example, are facing maybe different challenges and less, I would say, attention or attraction, notably in terms of investment. Yet you have managed with Mobility for Africa to disrupt the mobility sector and to really provide this expertise, and technological aspects and manufacturing skills in rural Zimbabwe. But what has changed for your beneficiaries, for especially women, since Mobility for Africa operated in the region, and how do you perceive the impact that you have in the region you operate in?
Well, thank you. And first of all, yes, I actually think we need a much more Pan-African approach. And I wish we had an EV or a transport czar at the AU, because this is a pan-continental problem. And I think we tend to have hot favorites like Kenya, which, is a market of 60 million, so more attractive, donor darling, yes. And then we get all the wealth and the money concentrated there. And I think we need to tell investors to stop. Then they think they can just catapult to every other market. But we need some Pan-African thinking, because while we might be a continent of 1.4 billion, we tend to fracture ourselves into multiple markets. And if we want as companies to grow and expand and capitalize on that 1.4 billion, we need to be, I think, a little bit more flexible to put money where we see the potential in ideas and new technology, and not say, oh, we won't fund it because we're in the wrong geography. And you can see I have a lot of grey hair now, because I've spent 5 years door knocking, but rather than door knocking, we've actually just leveraged what we can to build a pilot, which has now grown to a prototype, which can be expanded. And I think just on the presentation, there was some really exciting conversation. I think I strongly believe the challenges are there, just like every big disruptive technology. And the mention for when we introduce phones, what I think as Africans we need to be thinking about is how we really strategically build this opportunity to be as transformative and as disruptive as we want. So that means, what do we need? We need an ecosystem that's supportive. Okay, we're not going to do this if we don't invest in skills. We're not going to do this if we don't look at technology transfer. I mean, we can do everything in this continent, but we should also be smart. Where is the technology and the R&D going? Because we can't do it without R&D. And unfortunately, people don't want to invest in R&D. They want business models that work straight away in this continent, which is a double standard, because in the West, no one introduces a new product without a lot of R&D and pilot marketing and testing. So I think we need to really segue into where and how do we leverage the technology transfer. And I mean, I don't know if the politicians will save us, but we need to start looking at how we get that investment in training. And we developed, for example, in a year, a low-skill training program for three-wheelers and battery maintenance with a vocational training school. I mean, we could replicate that in 100 vocational training schools. It was pilot tested, built. It's meant for your average under-resourced African training school. So I think we need to be much more ambitious. I mean, we're focused obviously on rural mobility. We've been trying to solve what I thought was a simple problem, which is not, you know, the sort of the image of the beautiful African woman carrying a basket on her head and thinking that was easy. We know it's not. We know it absolutely steals their time and productivity. So we've been working with tricycles, low-speed tricycles. I think one of the problems is that a lot of what's happening, for example, in Kenya is we've got a model where we're just replacing a two-wheeler motorbike transport system with an electric one. We're not rethinking transport, and it's all good. We can put some women in a motorbike, but that's not disrupting the fact that we have a mobility crisis in rural areas.